He unearthed some of the largest dinosaurs ever to walk our planet. His work is helping to shift our perspective of giant herbivorous dinosaurs from their historic portrayal as hapless, lumbering prey to that of fearsome, hulking, hyper-efficient eating machines. He is known for his work in applying high-tech tools to dinosaur paleontology, including 3D scanning, 3D printing, and robotics. His TED Talk, How Hunting for Dinosaurs Showed Me Our Place in the Universe, has been viewed by 1.5 million people. Delegates, please give a huge hero's welcome to paleontologist and explorer, Dr. Kenneth Lacovara.
All right. How you doing? All right. Thank you. Wow, what a crowd. It's so exciting to see so many people excited about science. I'm excited about dinosaurs. Who likes dinosaurs? This is my kind of crowd. Now, I've learned that there's a lot of confusion about what is and what isn't a dinosaur. So let's talk for a minute about dinosaurs. What are they? Who thinks that's a dinosaur? Raise your hand if you think that's a dinosaur. Sir, you do not think that's a dinosaur? Tyrannosaurus rex, of course, the most iconic dinosaur of them all. But what about this? What about mosasaurs? Remember them in the end of Jurassic World, these big, scary sea monsters? Raise your hand if you think that's a dinosaur. How about pterosaurs, giant flying reptiles of the Mesozoic? Are they dinosaurs? Raise your hand if you think so. How about crocodiles? Who thinks those are dinosaurs? All right. What about this? A little fuzzy penguin. Who thinks a penguin is a dinosaur? Raise your hand. All right, well, before I tell you the answers, let's talk about what is and isn't a dinosaur, how we define them. Dinosaurs are distinct from their reptilian ancestors by their enhanced vigor and power. They had an upright stance with limbs hinged for straight-ahead forward motion, and to accommodate this kinetic lifestyle, they had extra big muscle attachments and particularly strong hips. Now contrast this with something like this lizard with this languid, sprawling posture. Not exactly an action pose, is it? Now to be sure, lizards are capable of blinding bursts of speed, but they spend most of their day in torpor, always about half a push-up away from taking a nap. So the answers: mosasaurs, big scary sea creatures of the Mesozoic, not dinosaurs. They do not possess the definitive anatomy of dinosaurs, and they branch off before there is the first dinosaur. These are sea lizards, essentially. Pterosaurs, like pterodactyls that you see in all the children's books, not dinosaurs. Your children's books are wrong. They branch off before there is the first dinosaur. They're the closest cousin to the whole dinosaur group, but not dinosaurs. Crocodiles are the closest living relatives to dinosaurs today, but not dinosaurs. That little fuzzy penguin, that is a dinosaur. And that little fuzzy penguin is a dinosaur to the same degree that a T.Rex is a dinosaur, to the same degree that a Stegosaurus is a dinosaur. What's that, you say? How can that be? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm here to tell you that common sense is a poor guide to understanding the universe, and always has been. You know, we tried it the other way. We tried understanding the world with just common sense, and it didn't work out too well. We didn't know where the sun went at night. We didn't know where disease came from. And then we got science, and things got a lot better. We started trusting our brain instead of our gut. You know, you go out in the daytime, you see the sun going around the earth, don't you? Well, that's not the way it works. You go out at night, you see the stars going around the earth. It's not common sense that the sun is at the center of the solar system, but it's true. And it's not common sense that a penguin is a dinosaur, but that's also true. And I'll explain why. The way we define animals is we look for the thing in the fossil record that fits the anatomical definition of that type of animal, and you go down and you say, okay, well, that's the very first one that we see, and what we're going to call dinosaurs is the first dinosaur in the fossil record, and 100% of that thing's descendants. And we call that a clade. A clade is a single branch on the tree of life. And if we go back in the fossil record, the earliest dinosaur that we see is one called Nyasasaurus, about 231 million years ago from Africa. Well, that sounds like a long time ago, doesn't it? 231 million years. You know what? That's only about 5% ago in Earth history. Not very long ago. That's why we can find so many dinosaurs. They were just here. And to put that in perspective, if we take the 4.5 billion year history of the Earth and we crunch it down to a single calendar year with the Earth beginning on January 1st, well, we don't get life on Earth until about 3.8 billion years ago. That's March on this calendar. We don't get multicellular life, things like jellyfish, until around this time of the year, until summer. The fossil record doesn't really get good until 500 million years ago when hard-bodied life evolves, things like trilobites and clams and things like that. Well, that's in the Cambrian period, the Cambrian explosion. During all this time, life is confined to the seas. There's nothing on land. The land looks kind of like Mars, but now the oceans are teeming with life. The first life comes up on land on this calendar at the beginning of December, little mosses that colonize the shores, and now there's something to eat, so the insects come up and the arachnids come up. And then we get the first dinosaur 231 million years ago. That's the second week of December on this calendar. And dinosaurs dominate the continents for 165 million years until they're snuffed out in a cosmic accident when an asteroid hits the planet 66 million years ago. And they all go extinct except for the birds. That's right. And on this calendar, that's Christmas Eve. Not very long ago, really, is it? 2% of Earth history ago is Christmas Eve. Our ancestors, like Australopithecus, Lucy, the first thing you could call a human, well, that's December 31st at 3:30 in the afternoon. And then I don't know if you can see the little dot that will represent us. Homo sapiens show up 300,000 years ago. That's 11:59:59 on the last night of the year. Corks are popping, the ball's dropping, people are kissing, and that's when we show up in this year, and we think it's all about us, right? So 231 million years ago, we see that first dinosaur. And if you take that first dinosaur and 100% of its descendants, well, look who's in that group. The things that you think of as dinosaurs, Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Dreadnoughtus, things like that, but also the birds. They're in that group. There's no way to kick them out. Being a dinosaur, like being any creature, is a binary condition. You're in or you're out. It's like the mafia or the CIA, right? You're in or you're out. So dinosaurs include the birds, and a bird is a dinosaur just as much as any of the others, which answers the age-old question, what did dinosaur taste like? So let me introduce you to another dinosaur, Dreadnoughtus shrani. Dreadnoughtus is a dinosaur that I found in southernmost Patagonia in Argentina. And Dreadnoughtus was found way, way down near Antarctica. It's near Tierra del Fuego. The locals call it Fin del Mundo, the end of the earth. If I could fly there directly from Philadelphia, where I'm based, and I can't, sadly, it's a 12-airport round trip. But if you could go there directly, look, when you cross the Amazon River, you're not yet halfway there. As you sit here in Lowell, Massachusetts, you're closer to the Amazon River than I am when I'm at my field site in southern Patagonia. It's way, way down there. And I work in a field area about the size of Connecticut, and within that area, there are 3 inhabited dwellings. This is one of them. This is one of the 3 houses owned by my friend Gaucho Ramon. At our field site, we're able to see the Andes Mountains. This is actually taken from the Dreadnoughtus quarry. And what you see flying there is an Andean condor. These are the largest flying birds. They have a 9-foot wingspan, and they're scavengers. They're vultures. So you can get pictures like this if you lay down in the desert and pretend to be dead. So my first field season down there was in 2004, and we found this. That's the femur, a giant thigh bone of a huge plant-eating dinosaur. That bone is 7 feet 3 inches long, 2.2 meters. Now we dug and dug and dug, and unfortunately that bone was isolated. There wasn't another bone around. But that year we found another site. It was about 1,000 feet up on the top of this mountain. And we found some other really big bones there, but they had been mineralized with iron minerals. So some of the biggest bones that had ever been seen that had turned to iron at the top of a mountain with no road that went there. We had to get to this site by rafting down a glacial stream. So I knew we'd need a helicopter to get these bones out of there, so I went to the Argentinian Air Force, and to my surprise, they said, "Sí." And so I met with the pilot and the cargo master, and we had everything ready to go, but with 10 days left to go in the expedition, this is a presidential level sign-off in Argentina, and he was out of the country. I found out that there wasn't going to be a helicopter, but I didn't give up. I had to go to Plan B. And Plan B was, well, we would raft our supplies across the river. I would hire Gaucho Ramon and a couple teams of horses, and we would take our plaster and our burlap up the mountain, jacket the bones in this plaster and burlap. I built a wooden stretcher. We'd carry them up to that slope that you see there. I went into town 4 hours away and had a welder build me a metal toboggan, lash the bones to this, belay them around my hip down to this gully, and then we had to clear out a 2-mile-long path of basalt boulders. And then we would hook the bones up to this sled, pad it out with prairie grass, and drag the dinosaur bones out to the desert this way. We got the job done, but it wasn't easy. Thank you. Well, I went back the next year, hungry for more, and on the first day of that next field season, I found this, another 2-meter femur. Only this time not isolated. This time the thigh bone was connected to the shin bone, and you know how that goes. And pretty soon we were exposing bones all day long there. At the end of this first day, we had 10 bones exposed. That's already pretty good. Went back down there, and 4 successive, really hard, brutal field seasons. It's a tough place to work, but we ended up with 145 bones from Dreadnoughtus. Spent a lot of time down there. All told, I spent a year living in my tent next to this animal. It's always very cold there. This is one of the 2 birthdays that I spent living next to Dreadnoughtus. You can see my very meager birthday cake there. It's just some cookies with a candle stuck in the top. Here's the ulna, the arm bone coming out here of Dreadnoughtus. Here's the scapula, the shoulder blade. You can see that's a really, really big bone there. And eventually the quarry comes to look like this. I never thought I would see a site like this in my career as a paleontologist. That tail of the great beast wrapping around me there. Off to my left is the hip, and the bottom right-hand corner of the picture is the shoulder area, and the humerus, the upper arm bone. And then we start to jacket the material to take it out. You can see that's the femur that we're covering with burlap and plaster there. And to save money, I finally was able to get a road built into the area, a 15-kilometer long road. And to save money, I learned to drive the front end loader, which is great. I always say that's the most fun a professor can have. It's amazing. If any of you guys like Tonka trucks when you were a kid, this is the thing. But let me talk to you for a minute about comfort. You know, when you're doing this kind of work, you're never, ever comfortable. It's always too hot or too cold or way too windy. My first field season down there, I provisioned cereal for the crew to eat for breakfast. You can't eat cereal for breakfast in Patagonia. You know why? Because it blows off your spoon before you can eat it. Sometimes you have food poisoning. You're always bruised and blistered and battered or bleeding like you see that I am there. And you know what? None of that matters because you're doing what you love. None of that matters because you're doing something that's significant to you. It's important. And so comfort is the last thing that you're thinking about when you're in a situation like this. Here's my friend Lindsay Zano. Does she look comfortable right now? Well, she's digging up a new species of dinosaur in Utah. She's having the time of her life, and she doesn't care if she's comfortable. Here's Colonel Buzz Aldrin returning from the moon. Do you think Buzz Aldrin is comfortable bobbing in a tiny little lifeboat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? No, that's a terrible experience, but it's the best moment of his life. Poor Charles Darwin, when he went on his 5-year voyage around the planet, that guy got seasick every day he was on the boat. But it didn't matter because it was his life's work. And so what I would say to you is don't chase comfort. You know, when you're at home and you're playing video games and you're sitting on the couch with your legs up and you're eating potato chips, you're really comfortable, right? Does it matter? Are you going to remember that moment in 5 years, in 10 years? Are you going to remember that moment next week? No, you're not. I promise you, all of the best moments in your life, the most meaningful experiences, the most sanguine moments, the most memorable ones, are all going to happen when you're uncomfortable. You're not comfortable when you're digging up a giant dinosaur or going to the moon or standing on a giant stage and giving a TED Talk or standing up in front of everybody you know and getting married. That's uncomfortable, but it's very, very meaningful. So don't chase comfort. Chase experiences. So here's the femur of Dreadnoughtus we're taking out here. This is about a third of the tail coming out of the ground. Here's a bucket of ribs, Patagonia style. And then eventually, after about 3.5 years of negotiating, I get all the permits in order for a research loan. We bring all this material, 16 tons of bones, up to my laboratory that was in Philadelphia. And here's the day that my ship came in. And one of those containers there has 16 tons of dinosaur bones in it. Took us years of work to prepare the material. That means opening the jackets, removing the rocks, studying the bones. And then in September of 2014, we published this new species, Dreadnoughtus shrani, and we published it in the Nature Journal Scientific Reports. Dreadnoughtus is currently the most massive dinosaur for which we can calculate a weight. There are probably some other ones that are as big or bigger, but they're so fragmentary we can't really tell just how large they are. So Dreadnoughtus in life, all fleshed out, it would have weighed 65 tons. People ask me sometimes, was Dreadnoughtus bigger than a T.Rex? Well, that's the mass of 9 T.Rex. That's the mass of 13 bull African elephants. That's about 10 tons heavier than a Boeing 737. Dreadnoughtus stretched 85 feet from snout to tail and with 2.5 stories at the shoulder, a truly titanic beast. And here you see it all laid out in my lab. It was a beautiful sight when it was in there. So we can ask the question, who's more closely related? A dinosaur like Dreadnoughtus and a dinosaur like Stegosaurus, or Dreadnoughtus, and do you see the third dinosaur in that picture? A little tiny hummingbird, right? So who's more closely related? Well, we can look, based on the fossil record, we can look back in the tree of dinosaurs, and we can see who has the shortest, what we call phylogenetic distance, the relatedness distance. And you see, you don't have to go as far to get from a Dreadnoughtus to a bird as you do to get from a Dreadnoughtus to anything on the other side of the dinosaur family tree. So Dreadnoughtus and a hummingbird and all the meat eaters, all the giants, are all more closely related to each other than they are to any of the dinosaurs on the other side of the tree. And we can do this with living animals too, but we don't have to just look at their bones. We can take their tissue and we can sequence their DNA. So we could ask the question, who's more closely related? Gaucho Ramon, or humans here, a lobe-finned fish like a coelacanth, and a rainbow trout. And when you do that, what you see is that you can go back in the molecular record. You only have to go back 412 million years to find the common ancestor of a human and a coelacanth, but you have to go all the way back to 430 years to find a common ancestor between a coelacanth and a rainbow trout. It's not common sense, but it's true. So if you go back to that ancestral fish, just like we went back to the ancestral dinosaur, what is a fish? Well, we'll say fish is the first fish and 100% of its descendants, and look who's in that group. The sharks and the bony fish and the coelacanths and the lobe-finned fish and everything that has 4 limbs or once had 4 limbs. Here's a little secret. You're a fish. Now, your friends are going to look at you funny if you call them fish, but you are a highly derived fish. Once you're in that group, you are in that group. So you got to get in touch with your inner fish, I would say. So we are members of many nested clades. We are humans, and we're apes. That's pretty obvious. We're also primates, and we're mammals, and we're reptiles and amphibians, and fish. And we have fish anatomy inside of us. Each of us a menagerie. Each of us a walking museum of natural history. But you know, it didn't have to be this way. There are an infinite number of histories that we could have had, but we only get one, and I think we got a pretty good one. We got the one that led to you and me. If you go back into the Cambrian period, 500 million years ago, you'll see this little tiny wormy thing, Pikaea. It's about 1.5 centimeters long. Now, would you pick this thing to be one of the big winners in Earth history? Would you say this thing is going to come to dominate the planet? This is the animal from which our Einstein will emerge? This is the animal that will become a spacefaring species? Probably not. But you know what? Pikaea, it's got bilateral symmetry. It's got a one-way digestive tract. It has its sensory organs concentrated anteriorly. It has V-shaped muscle patterns. Does that sound like anybody you know? Me. That sounds like everybody you know, doesn't it? Pikaea doesn't make it, and there will never be dinosaurs. There will never be whales, never bats, never birds, never you. If that space rock that took out the dinosaurs was nudged an infinitesimal degree to the left or the right 66 million years ago, the dinosaurs don't go extinct. And our ancestors, the mammals that spent all of the time of the dinosaurs huddling in the forgotten recesses of the dinosaur world, well, they stay that way. They stay as these little forgotten shrews that are trying to stay out of the way of the dinosaurs. You kill off an inconspicuous species of wolf-like creature along the ancient shores of Pakistan 38 million years ago, and today, there are no whales. Shift the winds one way or another across northern Africa 6 million years ago, and humans evolve or do not evolve. As forests turn to grasslands or not. The contingencies are endless and mind-boggling, an infinite kaleidoscope of things and events interacting with one another in ways that we may never fully understand. Everything matters. And the more I contemplate the improbability of my existence, of your existence, the more gratitude I feel for being alive, for being human, and for living now in an amazing age of wondrous technology and ever-expanding understanding, an age in which we can conceive of and affect a better future for all of us. Science needs you. Engineering needs you. The country needs you. The world needs you. You have an amazing opportunity to change this planet. Go and take it. Thank you.
All right, up. Yes, awesome job. Please have a seat right here. Thank you. I'll take that. And let's welcome back Kenson. Give it up for Kenson. All right.
How are you?
Have a seat, gentlemen. Kenson, it's all yours.
That was a really exciting talk.
Thank you very much.
Penguins are dinosaurs. Wow. So first question, how do you find a dig site for dinosaur bones, and what is that process like?
That's the #1 question I get asked, and we have a formula for how to do that. We all use the same formula. You find rocks of the right age, right? In my case, I want them to be Mesozoic rocks, the age of the dinosaurs. They have to be sedimentary rocks so that a fossil can form, right? You can't find a dinosaur in an igneous rock made by magma or a metamorphic rock that's been heated and squeezed. And then today, not then, but today, it needs to be in a desert. So you get good exposure of the rocks and good rates of erosion that are always exposing new bones. If you have those three things, you simply get yourself on the ground and you walk until you see a bone sticking out of the rocks.
Wow. Okay, second question. Since we only really find dinosaur bones, how do we know what they actually looked like?
Great question. So we can learn a lot from the dinosaur bones. You can see the muscle attachments, and you can reconstruct the musculature of dinosaurs, the size and the power of the muscles. Sometimes we find dinosaurs preserved with skin on them. There are dinosaurs that show us that certain ones had scales, certain ones had feathers. We even have some dinosaurs that are preserved with gut contents. There's a dinosaur, a duck-billed dinosaur from Montana. You can see this thing's last meal, and we figured out what it was eating based on that. We can also get information from trackways of dinosaurs. It's behavioral information. We find the nests of dinosaurs. So there's a lot that we can put together. And now we're starting to recover ancient biomolecules from dinosaurs. Dr. Mary Schweitzer at North Carolina State University was the pioneer in this. My lab is another one of the labs that are doing this. So in my lab, we are demineralizing dinosaur bones, and we're recovering blood vessels and blood cells and collagen and other proteins from dinosaurs. And we're getting to the point now where we can sequence these proteins, and it's like having barcodes on fossils. So we can say with a scrap of bone that was previously unusable, we could say, oh, I didn't know Triceratops was in South America, but now we know from this little bone and the proteins that we've sequenced. And also that protein sequencing technology is shedding light on medical research. There was a study out a couple years ago where a researcher, Jim San Antonio, discovered the master control regions of collagen because he saw that those are the parts of the molecule that are preferentially preserved, and he reasoned that if they're so resilient, they must also be functionally important.
So you mentioned sequencing some of the proteins in the dinosaur bones. Do we get DNA from that as well?
No DNA yet. I'm not hopeful that we'll recover dinosaur DNA, but I've learned as a scientist to never say never. I've been wrong about things before by saying that. DNA is water soluble, so it's going to be really hard to find the conditions where it hangs around a long time. And then, as a scientist, you have to think about the practical aspects of it as well. There's a higher experimental threshold to working with ancient DNA than ancient proteins. When you guys leave this auditorium today, you're going to leave billions of copies of your DNA behind. You're not going to shed a lot of protein in here, so you have to have a very expensive, very hyper-clean facility to work with ancient DNA. So far, the oldest DNA that has been recovered is about 800,000 years from a Pleistocene bear. And 800,000 years in my world is basically now.
So what do you enjoy most about your job, and what gives you the most energy?
Well, there's two things I really enjoy. One is the exploration and discovery. I can't believe that I get paid to travel the world and discover and dig up dinosaurs. I mean, how great is that, right? And so if you can find the thing that you love and turn it into your job, you win. Right? You win. I mean, it's amazing. And then the other thing is this. I also get to travel around the world and tell people about dinosaurs and tell people how awesome science is and hopefully inspire people to go into careers in science. And so those two things are just wonderful parts of my life.
So how did you get started in your field? What made you want to pursue dinosaurs?
Well, I knew from a very early age, and it was actually the early NASA manned missions that really inspired me. I saw these rockets going up on television when I was a little boy, and it was just mind-blowing to me. It looked like the future, and I wanted to be part of that somehow. And then in second grade, a woman brought in a box of rocks and minerals and fossils into my Cub Scout troop, and I didn't know these things were in the world. And then the next day, I wrote an essay in class about igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. And I wrote that sedimentary rocks were the best kinds of rocks because you could find fossils in them, and that I wanted to do this. And my father was a carpenter. I didn't really know anybody who went to college. And eventually I got to the point where I thought, well, maybe that's not for people like me. Maybe that's for other kinds of people. And I found out I was pretty good at playing the drums. So I went that way for a while. And I was a professional musician, and I toured the country as a drummer, and I spent a year as the house drummer in the Golden Nugget Casino in Atlantic City, which was a lot of fun, by the way. But then the book Cosmos came out by Carl Sagan. I really commend this book to you if you haven't read it. Who's read it? Cosmos? Yeah. Amazing book. And I read that, and it was like Carl Sagan had drilled inside my brain and was speaking just to me, and I realized this is what I have to do. I need to become a scientist. I changed my major in college, did well enough to get into a good master's program, did really well in that, got into a great Ph.D. program, and then right out of the gate, got a job. I'm at Rowan University now. I got a job at Drexel University in Philadelphia. Ended up meeting some colleagues at University of Pennsylvania, and before you know it, I was digging up dinosaurs in the Sahara Desert in Egypt. It was a dream come true.
Wow.
But if I could add one thing to that, people might tell you, you can't do this. You might feel like, well, maybe that's not for me, but think of that thing that you want to do in your future. Think of that job. Somebody's going to do it, right? There is going to be that job in the future. Somebody's going to do it. People are going to do it, and you're a people, right? Why can't it be you? It's going to be somebody. So, don't let that stop you. Don't let how to get from A to B stop you. There's a way to do it because somebody will.
Here's an interesting question. What is the process of naming a dinosaur?
Naming a dinosaur is one of the most important and I think solemn responsibilities that a paleontologist has. You can name it anything you want, but I think it's really important to honor the legacy of that species. Dreadnoughtus evolved of its own aegis and lived for millions of years on its own, very successful. And now me, this former shrew, I get to name it. And so I really wanted to honor the size and the ferocity of a creature like that. Herbivores are too often portrayed as these dumb, dopey, hapless creatures just kind of standing around waiting for a T.Rex to come out and take a bite out of them. Well, it's not true. I'm in the Explorers Club in New York, and if you talk to the safari guides coming back from Africa, what do they worry about? They don't worry so much about lions and cheetahs and things. They worry about hippos. Hippos want to kill you. Herbivores are mean and surly. Rhinos, elephants, water buffalo. And so can you imagine a big bull Dreadnoughtus, 65 tons in the breeding season, defending a territory? That animal would be incredibly dangerous, and itself would have nothing to fear, right? So Dreadnought, fear nothing, named after the turn of the last century battleships. So Dreadnoughtus, I thought, really did justice to that animal. And Shranai was named after a very kind, high-tech entrepreneur, Adam Shran, who helped support our project.
Can you describe yourself as a high school student? What were you like back then?
I was not the best high school student. I was really focused on playing the drums in high school. So I practiced the drums like 4 to 6 hours a day in high school, and I was smart enough that I could go to class and hear the talk and kind of have it memorized and take the test that way. I'm not recommending this. Right? I wish I didn't do it that way, but I was able to do it that way. If you're off to a slow start, you can make up that ground, if you've got the drive to do it. And so I did become a really good drummer, but then I had to, and really that helped me in life because the discipline that I learned practicing music is exactly the same discipline that I apply to science. And the place where I learned it first was in music. And you'll find that there's a surprisingly high number of scientists, high proportion of scientists that are also musicians. I think it's got to be at least half, I think.
I play piano.
There you go.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to all the students here, what would you say to them?
I think you've probably heard this before, but find that thing that you love and turn that into your work, and you can do that. And again, somebody's going to do that, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't. But it requires a lot of hard work. It requires a lot of uncomfortable situations, so forget about comfort. Work hard, and you can do that thing where you can turn your life's career into your love of your life. And Carl Sagan used to say, when you're in love, you'll want to tell the world, right? And that's how I feel.
Great, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.